Welcome to the Illini Drive here on WPGU 1071. I am your host, Jamal Collier, and we are excited and rocking for the season finale of the Illini Drive, the final show of the year, the season, until next fall. Elliot Sill, this is the last time that me and you are going to get the honor of doing this together.
That's why I insisted on sitting across from you so I could stare in your eyes while we share this final moment.
Exactly, and if you're watching on UPTV on Wednesday night, you can see Elliot staring dreamily into my eyes for this entire hour of nonstop sports action show. It's going to be fun. We got so many great things to get to. We got to talk about the Blackhawks who are up 3-2. You guys thought the series would be over already, didn't you? I did too.
I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't really know.
Well, I know they go to 4, so if they didn't have 4 wins, it wouldn't
be over.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the NBA playoffs. Everybody loves to talk about the NBA playoffs. Some fun series going on, and some series that are not so fun. The Spurs are just kind of better than the other two.
Yeah, I'd say there's one fun series.
Yeah,
but we'll get to that later.
But we'll get to all that later. We also have Joey Gelman on as well right now to talk to us. Joey, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Had to kind of reassess myself there.
Hey, you really bounced that really quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exciting.
He doesn't want to talk about himself.
Yeah, there you go. You can follow us in all the action on Twitter at Illini Drive. That is at ILLINIDRIVE. That's for your updates, not only through the show in this hour, but you can get your 24/7 fix. I think our producer Darshan has tweeted some 3 a.m. tweets before. Of course, those are some safe 3 a.m. tweets, but some tweets, if things are breaking in the sports world, we get a triple overtime weird game or something, it goes to 3 a.m. I don't think that ever happens, but if it is, Darshan will be on it. We pay him well enough that he is...
You're just lying. You're lying right now. This is Darshan's final show, too.
It is Darshan's final show and final time. We've never heard Darshan's voice on the Illini Drive, as a matter of fact. So this is, we may have heard it at one point, but no one really remembers. So this is Darshan Patel. You're about to make your Illini Drive debut. Darshan, how are you?
Wow, you guys saved me for the last show. I'm honored.
That's all you got. No,
I got kicked off after one line.
Darshan did win. You got to give him his props. He did win the bracket challenge this year,
for which he just became eligible now.
This is his first time that he's actually eligible.
And I'll be back next year.
Yeah.
How he's gonna be eligible the year I win? What about last year?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's on the show now.
Yeah, now he's on the show. Now he's an official member. You can't just be an off-air hand and do it, because that would integrity the show of the tournament. So that's why I've been a two-time reigning champion for the while, because got to keep the show integrity. God. Well, guys, we got to get to some actual sports talk here. And the NFL draft was this past weekend. Are you guys big NFL draft fans?
It's fun, but it's long. It's a lot of time commitment to put in there.
So you watched the first round, watched from your team picks. How'd you watch the draft?
I used to be a huge fan of the draft when I was a kid, but it kind of fades to where, there's so many guys and they all come in and like only half of them matter after 2 years. So I don't know. It kind of wanes a little bit, the interest, but I don't know. My interest has picked back up the last couple of years. This was a really interesting draft, I think, overall. You had a few storylines going into it.
Yeah. See, the weird thing is, and for those of who do not know, my rooting interest has been with the Pittsburgh Steelers through my life, and the Steelers are weird because they never ever sign any free agents ever, and that's not a joke. They don't sign anybody with any significance.
Well, the
they
Packers
don't do
don't
it.
either.
Exactly. So the draft is normally almost the highlight of their off season as far as who they get.
Yeah.
And it's also weird because the Steelers also select 20 something normally or late in the draft, so it's not like they're getting a great pick ever. But the draft has never been a huge. I'm kind of interested in it, but then I'm kind of like, for Pittsburgh, and I always look and see who they pick, and it's fun for me. But the draft never gets me going like it does everybody else. But I will agree, this draft was one of the more exciting ones, just because my boy, Johnny Manziel. I'm a huge Johnny football fan. I think I've ever reviewed
boys
that.
with Johnny Manziel?
I'm a boy.
Johnny
I wish he's a boy. Unfortunately, yeah, exactly. That F was just there for freaking. And Johnny, unfortunately, now, he fell obviously a lot lower than everybody thought he would. That he certainly thought he would, and goes 22nd to the Cleveland Browns. Bad news for him. He's going to get injured the first time he steps in on a field against Pittsburgh. But were you guys surprised that Johnny fell as far as he did?
I wasn't, just because I'm a Packers fan and I saw it happen to Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
People like to make a big deal about quarterbacks passing in the draft, but teams passing on quarterbacks in the draft. But it's just like each individual team, like, do they need a quarterback? A, and B, do they need a quarterback who will bring as much of a media circus as Johnny Manziel? And most of the time, the answer is like, nah, we're good. A lot of teams would rather have a middle of the pack quarterback who they know is reliable, rather than someone who A, might not turn out well, but B, could also be a negative impact in terms of media distraction and the whole Tim Tebow dynamic of his presence is bigger than his play. So I think it makes sense for a guy to fall that far.
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised either. And what I think is interesting is the fact that the Browns announced today that he'll be the number 2 quarterback for that team. And so when you look at that and seeing that he's the number 2 guy with a team that doesn't really have a star as a starting quarterback, it kind of gives you questions of, okay, how good is this guy? I mean, he's great out of the pocket, but his pocket presence-wise, he's a little questionable. The head case, obviously, I think intangible-wise, comes into a factor, but the fact that he's number 2 on the Browns has to raise some red flags a little bit.
Well, the owner said that, and the owner also recently said that Chudzinski was going to be the coach and that Lombardi was going to be the GM. So, I don't really buy it. I think it's just sort of it's a PR effort to kind of calm people down a little bit and be like, relax.
Would you take a risk with Johnny Manziel, a guy like that, as drafting him on your team? Because I don't think he's that big of a problem in that sense.
There's multiple dynamics coming into this answer for me. I'm a Packers fan. I watched Brett Favre growing up. And also, if you're the Cleveland Browns, what really do you have to lose?
Exactly.
I'd take a chance on a guy, especially if you need an impact player who will connect, who the fans can connect to and say, this is our guy. I don't see the reason not to take a chance on him.
Yeah, it brings media to Cleveland when they really have nothing going for me. They fired Mike Brown today for the Cavs. It's second time in 4 years or whatever it is.
Third time in 4 years the guy's been fired, just in general.
I think whether he's good or not is one aspect, but the fact that you're having that much buzz around Cleveland, a place that usually doesn't get that much, it's a nice aspect to have for them.
And I think this is weird. I think Johnny Manziel just fits the Cleveland Browns. That's strange to think, but he's got the kind of like, he
fits the Cleveland Browns is not a good thing for anybody ever wants.
Well, I mean, I can see it though. He's kind of a dog, kind of, he plays, he plays a really like
kind of the outcast that no one really.
Yeah, a really gritty game. Like, I play football, Does that not make sense? Did I not just put that in perfect context?
Johnny Manziel does not growl at people on the field when he's scrambling out of the pocket.
His money symbol.
How do you know?
That's true. I've never been on the field with Johnny Manziel, so I cannot confirm.
But I mean, his style is very run and gun and very gritty, and he's obviously a very tough competitor.
Yeah.
And he's I think that aspect of him, the competitive aspect, really fits the team. He's not a refined quarterback that would fit well in San Francisco, where the Joe Montanas and Steve Youngs of the world have been just very stoic passers.
Yeah. Listen to the Atlanta Draft here on WPGU 107.1. We're talking about the NFL draft, and I want to stick with Manziel too, because the one thing I was extremely glad about and did a little celebration to myself in my living room is, God, I am so glad Manziel did not go to the Cowboys. Because you talk about a circus and a nonstop. ESPN would literally pull all the reports. They would pull, I can't even think of an NBA guy right now. I'm trying to go off the top of my head.
Chris Broussard.
There we go. They would pull Broussard off of the NBA
Brian
finals.
Windhorst, Mark Stein.
Exactly. Those guys would be off the finals and into Dallas to hear what Jerry Jones has to say about Johnny Manziel and everything. It would just be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
thank you, Jerry, for saving everyone from that trouble.
Oh my God, it would have been awful.
And that's like, no press is bad press, but it's not good for your team to have that. To have all the circus and
because Romo
quarterback controversy.
Yeah, exactly. That shouldn't even be one because that would just be ridiculous.
He's good, but he's not solid enough to where it definitely would be his job. So. Yeah. The first interception of the season he throws, Manziel.
Which will be within the first 5 passes, too. So.
Oh, and I mean a preseason.
Okay. Again, the first
or
5.
Training
camp.
camp.
Training camp, yeah, exactly. The other big story of the draft was regarding Michael Sam. And obviously, he came out a couple months ago. Before the draft, and everybody kind of applauded him here. And before, he was supposed to be at the time. He was pretty a solid, I believe, fourth, fifth round. Everyone's saying. Then I believe he had a terrible, third to fifth, had a terrible combine. And he's a little undersized.
He's a tweener. He's too big. Or he's not big enough.
Right.
To play defensive end and too big to play linebacker.
Exactly. So he's kind of just got a weird size, not a great combine, and he fell. And for a while there, it looked like he may fall and not get drafted. I don't know if you guys are watching or following along. How were you guys doing? What were your reactions to that?
I was streaming it on ESPN. That's weird to say I was streaming the 7th round of the NFL draft on my computer, but I was watching it because I felt it was an important moment. And certainly people on Twitter were buzzing about it and clamoring, he's not getting drafted because of his sexuality. Other people saying, no, it's his measurables.
Yeah. What was it? I mean, what do you guys think? And obviously, was drafted, but and we obviously are not NFL GMs. We are the furthest thing maybe from NFL GMs.
I think it's pretty simple. Bill Polian was explaining it a lot. From a GM's perspective, he's someone that if you draft him, you're taking a chance on him. And as far as players that you draft that you're taking a chance on, it's not. You don't want a high profile one of those. You want someone. You want someone who's going to be. And I don't know if it's explicitly his sexuality or if it's the media attention that his sexuality would have brought upon the team.
Yeah.
Or
which I would assume it's the latter.
Yeah, I would hope it's the latter.
Right.
But I mean, it's sort of similar to the quarterback thing. It's just like each individual team was like, nah, not us.
Yeah.
Kind of passing the buck until, the Rams stepped up. And I said this, most cases it's better for a guy at that point to go and be an undrafted free agent somewhere that he has some choice in. But I think it was important for Michael Sam to get selected.
Yes. Okay. I completely disagree with you. You just said it'd been better for him to not be drafted. Okay. How do you feel?
Well, I think going back to what you were saying, it's the issue of, if he gets cut out of training camp, what's the reason for cutting? It gets that aspect to it in a way of, is he a football player or is it because of his
I believe if he gets
orientation?
cut, he'll get a chance to play in some preseason games.
Right.
And go to a camp and they'll realize, he just wasn't doing it. And I don't think that the chances, I think, was the question. If he gets cut, I feel like that'll be because he's just not a very good football player.
But that's a big difference, too, between being a draft pick and an undrafted selection is if you're undrafted, you have to impress upon the scouts or upon the coaches of the team. You have to earn it. Whereas if you're a draft pick, you're going to get a little more leeway because they chose you and they want to look good for having chosen you.
Right.
That's true.
And again, I'm not an NFL GM, never been confused for one. But if I am in the late 6th round, 7th round, and defensive line is one of my, and I guess you're not really picking on need at that point. But if I'm between Michael Sam and maybe 2 other guys who are, here or there, give or take, as far as this, I will draft Michael Sam.
You would?
I would draft him.
And he's going to want to prove himself, too, no matter what.
I think,
on whatever it is.
Why?
I would draft him, one, because I would like for my team to be to say, okay, we don't care about all the other stuff. This guy can potentially help us. That other stuff doesn't matter. And I'll take the media stuff, I'll take the attention and say, we can deal with that.
I think it really it depends on the situation that you're bringing him into. Because I remember in the whole 7th round, I was just like, oh God, if this guy goes to the Jets, it would be the worst thing for him. The New York media and all that would just be. And Rex Ryan, I don't care what Rex Ryan says. That just would make me uncomfortable.
It would be a media. It would be a media circus, Because if you go to New York, you go to Dallas.
But if you're a team like Pittsburgh or Green Bay that
can handle things like that.
That is classier and above that kind of thing.
We're better than everybody else.
Or like the Bears. I think there's a lot of.
I thought there was a chance he was going to go to the Bears when he was available and they came up. I said, you know what, that would probably be a good fit.
They said they were interested. If he went undrafted, they would be the first to sign him.
Okay.
But like the Jets and the Cowboys, these are teams, and like the Bengals, teams that have made roster moves in the past that seem to be stunt roster moves.
Yes.
So
the Raiders too.
Yeah, but the teams that I'm talking about wouldn't be interested in that kind of thing.
Because they don't operate like that.
Yeah, and the Rams, another one of those teams. Even though they're not necessarily, they don't have like this winning pedigree or anything, but they're an organization that is a good fit for him.
And another thing, I mean, reasons for that I would draft Michael Sam is, I mean, this guy was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year.
Right.
And, I mean, geez, I just think the SEC Defensive Player of the Year has more of a chance to have some upside and to make an impact. Now, maybe to start just somewhere on my team as a switch linebacker or something off the bench than some freaking guy from ISU.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, no disrespect to anybody from ISU or anybody listening from Bloomington or whatever, but I just think that the upside is higher
when you've played against that level
when you've
of
done
competition.
exactly when you've done it and proven it there. I understand his college is different, but I mean, jeez.
Yeah. But he got drafted though.
He did.
It's not like everyone passed on him. He was selected, and that footage of him and his boyfriend after was just so cool.
Good for him.
It was just, I don't know. It was an interesting moment because it was the same moment that we've seen with so many other players.
Yes.
But it was
different.
But it was completely different.
100% different.
And kudos to ESPN for airing that as well as NFL Network. I don't know, there was some backlash on third-party sites after that, and how do you explain this to your kids? The little kids are watching, and it's like, kudos to ESPN for stepping up and showing and being in support.
And there was a story that came out today about how the ESPN production truck lost the feed inside the Sam house, and their person that was there was saying, "Oh, this is really great emotional footage," and they didn't get a chance to watch it before they aired it so they finally they got it, like, I don't know, secondhand or something through another method, and they aired it without ever having seen it before. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's a big moment like that. It's nice of them to just let's see how it happens. Go with it.
Yeah.
Tell you what, you talk about hard to explain, or people, the controversy was that it may be hard to explain to a little 7 or 8 year old who's watching the 7th round of the draft. That may be harder to explain. Why are you watching the 7th round of the draft on a nice day outside in the spring? But what'll be harder to explain to them is when you have to hear the reactions of people like Marshall Henderson, or I believe the Dolphins say to Don Jones.
Yeah.
And you want to go ahead and tell people, I guess, what those guys said or what they've been tweeting.
Well, they just came out and tweeted derogatory remarks against Michael Sam. Don Jones was a little lighter. I mean, he had like an "oh my gosh" reaction, and then said like it was horrible in 2 separate tweets, and kind of brought them back. And then Marshall Henderson had a lot more detailed comments towards him, and then came back and said this was just for a project, a social experiment for one of my buddies in a psych class, which I don't know if you really believe, but it's just with social media now, everything's out there, and so for these guys, especially high-profile guys, even though maybe Don Jones isn't the greatest NFL player in the world, he's an NFL player. He's got access to a bunch of media outlets that we don't have. So for those kind of guys to have that access and use it in that way is a pretty poor choice. And Jones got suspended from the Dolphins for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that, to me, is like, I don't care what Don Jones thinks. I don't care what Marshall Henderson thinks about anything.
Or I've seen no one does.
But they shouldn't be using their power like that.
What power? I think, well, here's the thing is, like, those guys will happen. That's going to happen. You're not going to have everyone, and you'd rather them come out and say things like that, no pun intended, because that way they can be dealt with. And you have the Dolphins being like, okay, you want to say that, we're going to suspend you, we're going to fine you, and we're going to teach you a lesson about this, about how to not, make an ass of yourself on national or in a national forum like Twitter. So
Pat Forty, reporter from Yahoo, had a very great tweet in response to Marshall Henderson. I don't know if you've seen this, but he says, nobody will care who Marshall Henderson kisses on NBA draft day because he won't get drafted. So there you go, Marshall Henderson. But a lot of fun stuff, a lot of good storylines going through the draft. One thing, though, there were no Illini players selected.
Current Illini draft.
Current Illini. There were some ex.
Jay Prosh was a fullback who got taken from Auburn. He was actually a pretty high selection for a fullback. So props to him. Way to get out of the Beckman era to head to more promising pastures and get drafted. And there was someone else whose name eludes me. Walt Aiken or something. Walt Aiken? Anybody?
Yeah, somebody's shaking their head. That sounds right. Okay.
Yeah, but they got drafted, but Jonathan Brown, Steve Hull, Ryan Langford, Spencer Harris, and Nathan Shieldhouse did not.
No. Except for Nathan Shieldhouse, who was at home in Kansas City, probably somewhere relaxing and doing something else. Yeah. The other players have found themselves onto various rosters. The receivers, Steve Hull and Harris, are on the Saints. Langford's on the Ryan Langford, Dolphins, and Jonathan Brown went with Arizona.
I didn't know Spencer Harris got to the Saints, too.
Yes.
Cool.
Learn something here in the Illini Drive.
Yeah.
Yes, 6 p.m. is what we do. You educate the people. These guys, you expect them to make an impact going forward. What are your expectations just for these guys?
I don't know if I expect any of them to make the team. I think, having talked to these guys, they all seem to be good guys. I enjoyed, talking to Steve Hull, talking to Jonathan Brown, talking to Ryan Langford, and talked to Spencer Harris bunch. But I think Steve Hull had a phenomenal second half of the season.
Yes.
When you looked at his game, you weren't like, that guy's going to go pro. But he did have some numbers that are, they can speak for themselves a little bit. Jonathan Brown as well. And that defense was so atrocious this year that it makes sense that he wouldn't get looked at by teams. But, all these guys, I think it's good situations for them to have a chance. And that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Brown's probably the best guy out of that bunch that'll have a shot to make a team, at least make it through preseason and earn a spot maybe. But with Steve Hull, will be interesting just because he's a dual threat player and that he both played safety and receiver as time here at Illinois.
Yeah, I think the safety days are officially probably over.
I would think so too. But it's just it gives you another option to make the team, and if you can make it as a safety or as a receiver or something, special teams, you get a shot.
Yeah. I think he'd be a good fit maybe for a special teams player, but
honestly,
in a fifth receiver.
I believe that if Jonathan Brown, as we said, is probably the most talented and physically ready of that group. If Steve Hull, and the big thing for him has always been injuries, and if he can go in there, prove he's got his body's together, he won't be injured. I think he's got enough, like you said, to be a fourth, fifth receiver, or even somebody like maybe a sixth receiver. I know people do that still, but he could make a team in that kind of capacity.
I think so too.
And I think he's good enough to do that.
I want to believe that Ryan Langford can, but I'm
He's gonna go out of size. He's smaller.
He is small, but you can have small, quick guys in the NFL, and he is quick. He's very quick, which is favorable for him. And it's not like the Dolphins have an outstanding receiving core, but.
We got to wrap up here and get to commercial break. We still got a lot to get to, the NBA playoffs and the Blackhawks, and we're going to actually let Joey Gelman run the show here after the commercial break. So everybody get ready. It's the Illini Drive here on WPGU 107.1.
Hey guys, this is Erin Andrews, and you're listening to WPGU 107.1.
Welcome back in here, the Illini Drive. Good choice of music there. That was a fun one. As Jamal said, I'm Joey, as you all know, taking over this segment here. We're doing a little transition as Jamal and Elliot are leaving us, sadly, for next year. So it'll be myself, Torrance Sorrell, Sam Sherman, and Stephen Bourbon as the new crew, new kids on the block here for Illini Drive. So we're starting off here with hockey. Blackhawks get a much-needed win the other night. And so just starting off, what are your guys' reactions? Sam, you can start. What was your reaction from the last one?
For last night, I was a little bit worried when they started out the game. Because, I mean, to be honest, when they were up 2-0, I was one of the people who thought that series was over. I didn't think that the Wild had a chance. I thought that they finally it's like kind of their realization, like, oh, we're not quite there. But then, they stormed back. But then even last night, the Hawks kind of come out almost seeming like uninterested, like they kind of have done in other games. But they took care of business, I guess. Much thanks to Captain Jonathan Taves. So that was a nice thing to see. But honestly, I still think that the Hawks are going to come through with the next one and win it, because I do think that they're the better team. But they certainly got a wake-up call from the Wild, who are a lot better than I thought.
The fans at the United Center, which have been great, and, obviously have been spoiled we went to the last 4 Cups. I'm putting I'm a group myself and the Blackhawks fan, but
you're a roadie with them.
Yeah, exactly. The fans boo the Hawks. They went off the floor after the first period. What did you guys think of that? I was kind of. What did you think of it?
I thought it was kind of well warranted. They came out.
They were mad.
You hate to see your home crowd boo, but they came out so flat, and it's just shocking because you would think when they come home they want to get off to a quick start, and it seemed like they kind of took the home crowd for an advantage of like, okay, we're at home, we're gonna win this one anyways. And Minnesota got at them pretty quickly, and I've always said Minnesota's defense has really impressed me this series. Their presence on the blue line defensively, the Hawks can barely get into the zone each time, and so I thought it was just a bad gesture, if you will, because you hate to see that, but I think it was well warranted, and even though we thought the Hawks would run away with this series, after they went up 2-0, they've looked a little shaky.
It was a weird thing to see. I mean, because here's the United Center crowd that they love their Hawks. Blackhawks fans love their team more than a lot of fan bases. And I'm a White Sox fan, so when I've been to White Sox games plenty where I've seen Adam Dunn come up and he gets booed all the time. Last few seasons, so I'm kind of used to a fan base booing their team, but you don't really see that with the Hawks. And even for a lot of the game, the crowd was flat as well. I mean, they didn't have a lot to cheer for because they were kind of just responding to the way the team was playing. But that was a strange sight for sure.
Yeah, I think it was good to see, though. I think Corey Crawford really showed up yesterday. I mean, the first period he let in the one goal, kind of flipped over his body, but other than that, I thought he was really good, especially the last few minutes of hockey. Once they pull the goalie, it's always kind of white knuckles there at the end. I thought he made some really nice saves, and that was good to see. He gave up 4 goals back to back. They had an empty netter in one of the games, but I think he's still the key for the team, as it is for most teams in the playoffs. That your goaltender's got to be hot.
I want to jump in really quickly about the fans there, because I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that they were booed, and the Hawks had played really bad and awful. So they probably, and with everything else, they probably deserve to be booed. However, this is a team who really, in the last, like we said, 4 years, has not played that bad. And you compared to Adam Dunn. Adam Dunn hits 178. Okay, he deserves to be booed. Okay,
sitting like 230.
Yeah, he's having
Credit.
Yeah, exactly. He's on the upswing right now. He's hot in 238. But I just thought that it was kind of just a little ridiculous when I heard. I said, "Are they booing really right now?" And again, don't give the Hawks any credit. They had played completely awful up to that point. The players may have noticed that. The players noticed definitely and played to it a little bit. But I just thought it was ridiculous, and how spoiled Blackhawks fans are getting right now.
Do you think then, going into the next game for them, the bowl league suspension had anything to do with yesterday's performance and how that goes moving forward?
Well, they're undefeated in the series when the player's suspended.
That's true.
That's the key.
Yeah, that's the key. But I don't know. I think it's really about the Hawks' effort. I mean, I don't think it's anything particular that the Wild are doing. If the Hawks show up like they did in games 1 and 2, I mean, they kind of won easily. Then they come out with a sort of malaise, and the Wild are able to hang around. So I think it all is dependent on the Hawks, and maybe after the home crowd boos them, they can get in gear a little bit.
You mentioned Crawford earlier. Did you guys see his Game 5 career numbers in Game 5s? He's 8-0 with a .955 save percentage.
Wow.
Not only that, and I want to jump in here too. That's ridiculous. Yeah. In the Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane era, when the Hawks are 2-2 after after the Game 4, they are 13-0 in games. The next two games, what is it, 5 and 6? I'm trying to do the math here. In games 5 and 6. When it's 2-2, every time they have won the next 2 games and finished series in 6. That's what?
And that goes back to what you're saying about how surprising it is with the crowd, because it's like, or with the fans, it's like, this is a team that's had success, lots of success.
Not been in that situation.
I mean,
before.
you'd think that there's got to be, and like you said, they did play poorly, very poorly,
yes.
But there's got to be a little bit of trust there at the same time of like, here's a team that they're not like always this like dominant team. I mean, at the end of the day, they have been, but they've had struggles in the playoffs in the past. This isn't like a new thing for them.
Right. I thought it was ridiculous. But those numbers too, that Crawford knows 4 and 5. I was like, is that right? It's almost crazy.
And these guys, this is kind of a larger picture. But again, those two, Kane and Toews are 25.
Yeah.
26 maybe tops. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a little bit of trust there, but also, I don't know, this Wild team seems to really match up well against the Hawks, and so that's where it can kind of worry you a little bit of, okay, they play pretty physical. They have great defensive pressure on a team that really relies on just speed, getting into the zone versus kind of going through a regular cycle, because once you try to do that, they've had a lot of difficulty getting into the zone. So there is that trust, but I don't know. Just the nature of this series, obviously the Blues series was a lot of fun, back and forth, really hard-hitting kind of series. But just the way the Wild have played the Hawks and kind of exposed certain aspects to their game is why there's that kind of little hesitant moment of, oh, this couldn't end so well, where we were so used to seeing just how good they can really be.
I mean, the Wild have really, like you said, they've exposed a lot of things, and they've shown certain ways that the Hawks can get beat. But again, but at the end of the day,
they don't quit, right?
The Hawks win last night. I mean, to play like they did for really a lot of that game, and then to still win it, I think that says a lot about a team.
think it does too. And then going to the next one, do you think the Hawks will take this series still?
Yeah, I think they'll definitely win the series. Will they win Game 6? I'm not so sure. I kind of think I have a feeling they'll close out in 7. But I still, my confidence hasn't wavered that I think they'll take the series.
I'm right there. I think that they will win this series. A couple, I never would have thought, when they were up 2-0 that this is going to 7 games, but it may. But I don't think that they're gonna let this one slip away.
Much the same. When this went up 2-0, I said that was gonna be a 5-game series. Chicago kind of finish them off, and give the Wild credit. They are better than last year, and I still rather play them instead of Colorado. I rather play the Wild. However, this, like I said, is a pretty good team. The Blackhawks are 13-0
Right.
when it's 2-2 in games 5 and 6. I can't say they're not going to win this game, right? Yeah, it's facts. It's pretty much a fact. The Wild should not even show up to the next game because they're going to win this one. So, and I think the Blackhawks are going to close this last game out tomorrow night or Tuesday night. And if it's Wednesday, you'll know that I'm an idiot and wrong because you're waiting on Game 7.
Yeah, I think they'll close it out too. I just was so confident in the beginning, and we all said it too. They'll lose the third game, but they'll take it quickly. So I think they'll still prevail, but I think this is a good test for them, this Minnesota team. And going off of that, I mean, how impressed are you guys with this Wild team and what they've shown? I mean, obviously adding Parise and Sutter to this team. What have you seen from them, and what do you think they present moving forward here?
Yeah, I've been impressed with them just because, towards the end of that Blues series, then after the Hawks took games 1 and 2, I was right with you guys that the Hawks were kind of rolling and setting up for that deep playoff run that we know they can do. And the Wild really came out in game 3 and 4 and even game 5 really pretty neck and neck with the Hawks and dominated, a lot of stretches in those games. So I was impressed. They're definitely improved from last year, just from watching. I remember watching last year. They're definitely improved from that. So yeah, major credit to the Wild.
They're really playing well, and it's just frustrating if you're a Wild fan or really a fan of any team and you have to go up against the Blackhawks because you play them and then they'll show signs of dominance and then they'll show like that they're kind of vulnerable at times and you'll probably thinking like, oh, we've got a shot here, and then suddenly they'll wake up and once they wake, because the Hawks are still the Hawks and they can have these stretches of poor play, but at the end of the day, when they're dominant, there's no one's going to beat them.
We talked about this a little bit when the Hawks played the Blues. And that the Blues, essentially, their idea behind building their team now should be we have to put together a team that can beat Chicago. And I almost want to ask, is that the idea, if you're in the Western Conference right now, that right now the Blackhawks are here, we have to figure out a way to get past them? Is that what you would do if you're, again, we're playing NHL GM now. We just played NFL GM, which I am neither one of those things, if people are wondering.
Yeah, I think you have to, just because we talked about the core of the Blackhawks is still so young. What's going to change? 2-3 years down the road, they're still going to be there, and they've shown the ability to kind of augment their roster, in recent years to pick up the key role players that they need. So, they have to be the team to beat. Now, whether they weren't, the top seed this year in the West, that's kind of irrelevant. But, you have to plan against them being there for the foreseeable future.
I think the teams definitely are going to have to start kind of building with that mentality. But, you look at a team like the Avalanche, and I'm very afraid of that team in about, next season, but even, 2-3 years down the road. And that's a young team. That's a team sort of like the Hawks who they're young, they're very talented, but in just a few years together, and they're going to be really clicking even more.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the model. They've won 2 cups in 4 years or 5, whatever. Yeah, 4 years. So it has to be the model. I always complain about their defense because, I have to find something wrong with a team that wins that much. But I think it has...
You like complaining here.
Yeah, it's fun. But I think that has to be the model. They have so much depth and so much talent that, finding guys like Taves and Kane in back-to-back drafts like that is difficult to do. You got to be bad to do it. But the fact that they've been able to build around that like they have, and with all the salary cap constraints that Bowman faces for this team every year, especially after they won the first cup, the fact that they're at this high level of play for so long is pretty impressive. And then looking at defense-wise, how impressive is it that Nicholas Hjalmarsson is still playing with a neck brace on, and he still can't speak?
I love that guy. Leads
great.
The playoffs in block shots, I believe. When you think of top line defenders on the Hawks, he's not on the first group of D guys, I don't think. coming off the bench. But I mean, he just comes in. He's the classic hockey player that just doesn't sit out. He can't speak still, and he's still just putting himself in front of every shot. Taking slappers like it's nothing. I love him.
I mean, how often do you hear? Maybe you do a lot, but I mean, I've been noticing a lot lately that you'll hear the announcers talking, and Jarmelson with he saved this goal here, he saved this goal. You're thinking saves, like obviously you're thinking about the goalie, but no, he's like you said, he's stepping in front of everything. And when I heard that he couldn't speak, but he's good to go for the next game, I'm like, the pain. I mean,
What does that
we're
mean?
just talking about how he can't talk, but
Yeah.
the pain that it must, where you lose your voice.
It's not like you
from
just
it.
lost your voice from speaking. You got a puck square
Yeah.
in your neck.
I'd be out for 10 weeks.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, no, yeah.
More impressive of a gritty performance. We've seen the last. Duncan Keith obviously had the tooth, getting his tooth knocked out.
Duncan
and everything.
Keith.
Yeah, and then just with Yarmouth. Which was more impressive? I'm trying to think about this. Because again, if my tooth was knocked out, you wouldn't see me for a while. I just wouldn't be on television.
I would quit the sport.
Yeah.
It's got to be Yalmerson, I think, because as a defender, you have to be able to communicate out there. That's probably the number one.
tough, yeah.
That's probably the number one position where you have to be in coordination, because if there is an odd man rush on you, you have to know where your other guy is, and it's difficult to do. I mean, losing teeth obviously hurts a lot, but I think you can come back and play from that, even though if you may have a little lisp coming back with no teeth up in the front. But yeah, communication-wise, the fact that you can't talk and that he may not be able to talk for the rest of the series, that's a pretty daunting task, and he's really taken it on by storm.
Yeah, losing teeth is kind of par for the course for hockey players. But have you seen some
That's
of these
true.
guys?
Sign up for
These
that.
Russian guys, they've got 3 teeth left.
On a good day.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Joey on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just got to watch if you watch the games, that some of these pucks that he's going in front of, he'll go down. You see him go down sometimes after he takes a hit, and you're like, oh, that's not going to be good. I don't think he's coming back. And then he just gets hit. I don't even think he sits for like a second. And then it's just amazing, because if any of those hits happen to any of us, like we've said, it wouldn't go so well.
Ridiculous.
I mean, I'm a big baseball fan too, but for you, Jamal is the baseball guy. That you go out as a pitcher with a blister. This guy's playing with no voice. How do you compare those?
It's completely different now.
All
It's
right.
not like he, if he's missing one of his fingers, he probably couldn't really swing his puck. Yeah, swing his stick. I don't know.
Just sling some pine tar.
Yeah. There you go.
Tape it up.
Really quick, the Nashville general manager came out and said, Nashville Predators GM says that they're a Taves and Kane away from competing for the cup.
It's just that, right?
The only thing separating me and Jonathan Taves is talent. So that's pretty much all he said. So.
That's great. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be right back with our third block of the day, talking NBA playoffs. You're listening to the Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1.
This is Clark Kellogg of CBS Sports, and you are listening to the Illini Drive. Enjoy.
Hey, if you're not doing anything on Thursday, Against Me is performing live at the Castle Theater in Bloomington, Illinois. That is located at 209 East Washington Street, and doors open at 7 p.m. and tickets are only $17. It's 17. It's super cheap for a great concert that's to get up close and personal with Against Me this Thursday, the Castle Theater. And if you're looking for more information, if that wasn't good enough for you, I told you 7 p.m. this Thursday, $17. But you want more stuff, you can go to castletheater.com and for other Castle Theater events. Again, this Thursday, doors open at 7 p.m. and they're just $17. It's super cheap for it's gonna be a great fun show, fun concert.
Intense promo.
Oh,
I'll have to take you, Jamal.
All right, guys, we're gonna talk NBA playoffs. I'm Torrance Surreal, kind of been chilling in the back for the first 2 segments. Producing, part-time producer / co-host / lover / all of the above. But
The real TS4, everyone.
oh yeah, yes sir. But so pretty much the game yesterday, the Pacers versus Washington, and Roy Hibbert finally showed up.
Well, he showed up in game 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to gauge what it actually means that he's playing well, because they are playing the Wizards, who scored 63 in game 3, and everyone was just like, it wasn't some colossal failure. It was just, that's the Wizards.
Right.
They're a young team. They're going to make mistakes. If you're
And that would have beat the Bulls by 10.
yeah. But if you're an experienced playoff team like the Pacers, you should be able to handle them. So it's hard to tell whether it's them finally getting their act together or if it's just them playing the Wizards.
And what's ironic too is that you have Indiana bench only scoring 2 points. That's terrible. And you have Washington outscored them 32-2. But then Washington almost looked like they was pretty much winning the game the whole time. I mean, they came back from a huge lead and they kind of fell off again. And then you kind of see just Indiana kind of playing Indiana basketball. But at the same time, you can still poke holes during their game. And I just don't see this Indiana team making noise. Even if they do win, I mean, obviously they have a 3-1 commanding lead. But even if they do win this series, I mean, I don't think they're going to be a good match against the Heat next series. I mean, depending, obviously, if Miami's going to win.
Yeah, they can turn it around, but they still need a lot of momentum going the right way. They don't have a lot of momentum right now. They're just sort of stopping the bleeding of what has been a terrible, terrible 4-month stretch or so. But clearly, they need to make another leap, even if they do win the series. But I think having had good games from Paul George and from Roy Hibbert is a huge sign of relief for those fans.
Yeah, and Paul George having 39 and 12. It helps when he's 7 of 10 from 3.
Which he doesn't usually shoot that, but
yeah, that obviously helps. I think they're trending the right direction, most definitely. I think they couldn't have gotten much worse. But I don't see them challenging the Heat. I'm kind of giving the Heat this series against Brooklyn. I mean, maybe I'll look wrong today if Brooklyn wins.
And if the Pacers are still playing like this or playing close to this, I don't want them in the finals because they will get swept by any of the 4 teams left in the West, even the Blazers, who are playing and just getting destroyed by the Spurs.
And I think there's a lot of pressure on Indiana too, just the nature of their team, because a lot of pressure on Paul George because he's really a dynamic player, but he's taken it upon himself to kind of sit down with, they said him and Roy Hibbert went fishing to get his mind back, and has been playing well. Is he gonna have to do that with Evan Turner and Lance Stevenson too, because they're fighting? So I don't know cohesion-wise if this will last that long, but put a lot of pressure on Paul George if he wants to bring his whole team together, which I don't think should be on him. But they probably win the series still, but it's just a lot of
And you wonder
weight.
if Vogel could be doing a better job, and it's hard to imagine that he couldn't be doing a better job in terms of keeping that group cohesive. But yeah, I mean, I rewatched the 30 for 30 yesterday, Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks, and that team, Indiana Pacers basketball should have an identity, and I think we were talking last week about how the Bulls were kind of uncomfortable about not being the underdog in the first round. I think the Pacers are starting to get uncomfortable and sort of out of their element with the fact that they're so favored and so looked upon to be one of the elite teams. Like last year, they were coming through the conference. They won the first round. They were the 3 seed, so they should have. But then they played the New York Knicks, and they were the underdog in that series. And the New York, they had the star power. They had Carmelo and the veteran presences of Jason Kidd, and I think Kenyon Martin was on that team. So they were the underdog in that series. They won that series, and then they played the Heat, who were just impossible for them. So up until this season, when they were starting to get looks, they weren't even favored out of the gate this year. It was Heat and Bulls. And so when the Pacers finally had sort of cemented themselves at the top, that's very close to when they started falling apart. Maybe they need this to be looked at as a team that's not going to do anything in order to play to their best abilities.
Because assuming that everything goes as it is right now, and they're going to end up playing the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, the way the Heat have looked and the way Indiana have looked, I can think to myself, I'm thinking Heat and 5 is the kind of the way it seemed that it's going toward.
If the Heat allow that.
What do you mean if they
allow the Pacers to win a game?
Okay, right, okay.
There'll be a game where Miami doesn't turn it on. There always is.
I mean, there wasn't against Charlotte.
That's Charlotte. That's true.
Yeah, that's the
You
Bobcats.
need to turn it on against them.
That's
especially
true.
when Al Jefferson.
But they and I don't think they're in jeopardy versus the Nets at all. But we can talk about that a little later.
Just before we switch gears and go to the OKC and Clippers series, obviously I'm a huge Heat fan. You guys know that, but honestly, in my opinion, I think the Pacers probably going to turn it on when they play the Heat because they play good when their backs is kind of in a sense against the wall because even though they're the number 1 seed, people still think the Heat is going to win, especially considered how the playoffs is looking right now. But when there's things said about the Pacers and obviously the criticisms about Roy Hibbert, I think they're going to make it a competitive series. They kind of play down to the competition. This is kind of the team I see in the Pacers, which is they shouldn't be doing that, but they're going to show up, obviously, when they play a a more competitive team.
I think it might take a punch in the mouth to kind of wake them up.
Yeah.
Maybe a blowout in game 1 or something, which I don't know if they can afford that. They might, I don't see the Pacers winning the East, but who knows? Maybe they can turn it around.
All right,
We've seen
guys,
crazier
just
things.
switching gears here with OKC series, and you just seen the Clippers came back from 22 points. They was getting destroyed in the first quarter. I think they was losing by 16 in the first quarter, and then came all the way back, just primarily due to just good defense from Chris Paul. And I don't know if you guys seen this, if you was watching this game. Did you see Chris Paul guard Durant? He's literally a whole foot taller than him.
He took it to him, though.
Took it to him. He at least got about 2 or 3 different turnovers on him, and that was real costly.
One was just a plain rip that was a breakaway. That was just like, wow, that shouldn't happen to the MVP.
No.
But, credit to Chris Paul. He's always been looked at as a good defensive player, but not very consistent. He gets kind of loosey-goosey when he's guarding, athletic point guards like Russell Westbrook. But he stepped his game up, and Doc was quick to point out on the post-game conference that was desperation. That'll break Chris if we try and play him there for 48 minutes.
Did you hear Doc how he opened his press conference?
Yeah.
They asked him, "Do you want to make any opening statements?" And he goes, "I just need a beer."
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Doc, I love him.
Yeah.
But props to Doc. I mean, that closing lineup was Paul and Collison, 2-point guards, and then Blake was at the 5. They went really small against OKC, which everyone kind of thinks going small is kind of in OKC's favor, getting Perkins out of the game. But at both ends, OKC couldn't stop Chris Paul, Blake Griffin pick and roll. They ran that time and time again down the stretch. And at the other end, the Thunder couldn't get into any offense. It looked like the Heat in 2011 with Westbrook and Durant just kind of trading back and forth. You take it, I take it, you take it, and they made some crazy shots to keep it close, but I mean they were not getting.
And they had a shot for the win. If Russell had adjusted his shot, by a millimeter on his release, we would have been sitting here talking about how Russell Westbrook may have saved the series for the Thunder.
Yeah, it's that close.
It was crazy. It was a crazy finish. And this is the one series that I think is interesting in the second round. The entire second round bores me to death. The Spurs are a lot better than the Blazers. The Nets are joking when they think they can beat the Heat, and the Wizards shouldn't be in the second round of the playoffs, and the Pacers are playing like a team that shouldn't have made the playoffs. So I don't really care about any of these series except for the Thunder and Clippers, because these two teams they're loaded with talent, and they are playing like they're loaded with talent. And I mean, I'm excited to see these conference finals. If the Spurs versus either one of those two clubs and Heat Pacers should be interesting.
Right.
But
Durant's obviously catching a lot of flack. Paul has been guarding him, and people are starting to now question, say, well, Kevin Durant's got all these points. This is all nice. But when is he gonna? Win? But as far as the championship thing, they're starting to push that narrative. People are now. What do you think about that? Is that too early and ridiculous, or okay? When MVPs now it's time to start.
I think if you're an MVP, you should be competing for championships, certainly.
But he has.
And he has. But does he have a responsibility to win one? I don't think so. I think the Thunder have not played as well in the playoffs as they have supposed themselves to be based on the regular season. And consistently, they've been sort of not quite level of like Carmelo Anthony Nuggets, where they couldn't get out of the first round. But this Thunder team, you had Westbrook, Westbrook, James Harden, and Durant, and Serge Ibaka. Like, you've had the same core for 4 years. They haven't changed their starting lineup for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
has Harden been going for 4 years?
No, he was off the bench though.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they've been starting Westbrook, Cephalosha, Durant, Collison, Perkins, or Ibaka Perkins, for 4 years. So it's getting to the point where either something's got to give. He's got to win a title, or they've got to change the way that
window's only open for so long.
Yeah, and this team has a longer window than most because those guys are so young. But
do you look at Scott Brooks then as a coach wise?
I don't like Scott Brooks as a coach.
No, because I've heard a lot of criticism. That's why I'm curious what you thought.
Well, and I mean, people like to say that he doesn't run an offense, and he doesn't. But then again, it's not like the Heat have their system that works. They've got LeBron James, and they're sort of running a non-offense as well, and it's working out very favorably to them. And they beat the Spurs in the finals, who do run a very precise offense. So I don't know if it's that so much, but hearing him in the post game, he comes out and he says, well, I just want to say, instead of saying like it's a tough loss, he's like, that was a very physical game. And everyone just kept being like, why did he say that? Why was that what he thought of the game? Like, did you watch the rest of the playoffs? Because they're also physical.
Right.
I just don't know if he can take this team any higher than he has. And so I think maybe they should be looking to change if they don't win this series.
I'm a big believer in. I don't like firing coaches so easily because I always believe if you hired the guy and saw something, then you should stick that out and let it fly. That's in any level, any sport. The thing I think that coaches make a huge difference is taking lesser talent and making them a lot better. And I think a team can overachieve because of a good coach. And that's normally about all the real credit I give coaches. Sometimes when you've got, because I think just a lot of times talent will just win out, especially in the NBA. So when Thibodeau, I believe, is just an amazing coach because he makes John Lucas III look like somebody that people actually want to sign on their team, which is not a true statement. It should not be a true statement.
Yeah.
So that's why, I'm not sure how I feel about Brooks really right now, but yeah, that's just my 2 cents on
The way you
coaches.
look at the Thunder bench. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got guys that they've supposedly been developing. Jeremy Lamb, Perry Jones. Steven Adams has shown flashes, but these guys, you can't rely on them at all to provide.
I think Steven Adams has actually been excellent in this series as an agitator and someone who's just a big body. But you're right. Like Perry Jones and Lamb haven't been present at all.
All right, guys, we're gonna do badass one last time. How you guys want to do this? You want to do badass of the year or just a typical regular badass? Or this last show, guys, let's make it a
Go
little
ahead and give
interesting.
our badasses for the year.
Want to kick it off?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say mine at the end. Mine's kind of heartfelt.
You gotta go.
I think you guys should. I think you guys should go first.
I'll go. This is not a badass of the week. This is a badass of the year.
But it serves as both.
Yeah, it definitely works as both. Michael Sam, defensive end / linebacker for the St. Louis Rams. First of all, I think it is very badass that you are the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. That's very, very badass because the SEC is the most badass college football conference. And then to come out and be the first openly gay professional football player is badass because that takes a lot of guts to do that. And what's even more badass about it is his team knew. He had told his team, it wasn't like he had hid it from them. He was very open about it from the start of the season. And then to get drafted as well, I'd like for this narrative to continue to where he makes the team. We haven't gotten there yet, but either way, what he's done for gay athletes is astounding. And his impact on the football field speaks for itself. It's not that he's getting this press because of his sexuality. I mean, he's getting the extra press, yes, but he has certainly earned it with the way that he played on the field. So I think he's a perfect candidate for Badass of the Year. He sort of encompasses a lot of what's good about sports in 2014.
All right, I'll go next. My badass of the year is Greg Popovich. I was watching the finals last year, really rooting for the Spurs. I love the way they play, just that they're there every single year, and that Game 6 was devastating to watch. And I'm not even a Spurs fan. I just really like how they play, and for them to come back after that devastating finals loss, be the #1 seed in the West by 3.5 games, and while still resting players, no one played more than 30 minutes a game. Now they seem to be hitting their stride. They got past Dallas. They're up 3-0 on the Blazers. I think Popovich is the best coach in the league, and I don't think it's that close. So I hope his badass of the year continues going into the finals coming up here.
I'm going to go with one I did earlier in the year. It's the owners of the ABA Spirits. That's still my favorite story of the year, the fact that when NBA and ABA merged, all the ABA teams got kicked out, took like a lump sum of money and said, see ya. And these guys decided, you know what, we'll bet on the future of TV and say we'll get X amount of revenue, or a third or something of the revenue of all TV for the remainder of our lives. And obviously TV's become huge, and the NBA has already paid them $300 million, still owes them $500 more million. So a very smart move by that family, and so that's just cool. A badass moment that they saw that far in the future. Goes, this is going to make us a ton of cash, and it worked out beautifully for them.
You don't have one? Okay. So pretty much keep it quick since we're a little bit short of a time, but pretty much my badass. I assume none of you guys are athletes, but you two guys, Jamal, Elliot. Last episode, guys. Great season. Really appreciate it. And you guys really pretty much made the bar high for me and Joey to kind of keep things going next year, hosting and co-hosting the show, producing, etc. So I really appreciated that. And, yeah. Hard fought.
You're a sweetheart, Torrance.
That's Ellie's first badass of the week.
Appreciate it.
I think I've gotten one before. I don't really remember why. But
Did Kevin Hambley give it to you for having a good first show? I remember he commented on how good your first show was.
Yeah, for being relaxed or something. I was like,
We got that to look forward to next fall, then.
Exactly. So, yeah, if he doesn't give you one, you've already got your status set.
Oh, boy.
Again, thanks to all of you guys for coming on there each and every week. Thanks for you people listening at home that have put up with me for this throughout this year.
And me. And me.
I said thanks to you guys here. That's the first thing I said. You listening to me here?
No, I put up with you and put up with me.
Oh, I put up with you too. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. They like you.
I know.
Anyway,
They tweet me about it.
Thanks. It's Elliot tweet, isn't it? No, but thanks to everybody listening at home. I want to thank all of our guests throughout the year, from Kevin Hambley and the girls from Illinois Volleyball, all the Illinois sports that have come on. Anybody that's called into this show, friends of the show, people who have tweeted us and followed us on Twitter. Me and Elliot are riding off into the sunset now. These guys are taking over. You got a little sneak peek, a little taste, a little tease of what they're going to give you next season. It's going to open up back in the end of August, so be on the lookout on that. Follow us on Twitter. We'll have more information when that's coming out and everything. Thanks to all the good people at Urbana Public Television. You can give them badass for coming on and putting our mugs up on the flat screen every week as well. So it's been a fun ride. It's been an awesome ride, and I'm going to thank everybody for allowing me to be a part of it. And be a part of it.
And Darsh.
And Darshan Patel as well, who officially does have a voice for the first time in 2 years. With that, we're going to sign off, and we're going to send you back to Champagne's Alternative, WPGU 107.1. Minutes over here. Who cares? Yeah, but like maybe Courtney Evans will know this. She'll call back in. Hi everyone, this is Jamal Carter from the Illini Drive. I want to thank you for joining us every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. throughout this year. But we're going to take a little break on this season and pick back up in late August. You can follow us still on Twitter at Illini Drive for all your Illini sports updates and for more info on the show.